Hey, is there a day that goes by that you and your spouse or you and your friends or you and your coworkers don't talk about how much money you spent at the grocery store last weekend and how much sticker shock you had? I'm trying to think of the item that really got my attention. I never used to, we love a good steak. And I never, we shop for meat, and I would never really bother to think about the price of what it was I was buying until I got to the checkout line. And now I find myself reading the label and making sure I go to the section where the meat's getting ready to expire in a few days, and therefore the price has been reduced. I look for reduced price meat. What was the thing that got my attention the other day? Oh, it was toilet paper. Paper products in general, paper towels, but toilet paper. A mega 48 mega rolls of toilet paper was like $20. I thought, $20 for toilet paper? Now, back when we had COVID-19 and the supply shortage and you couldn't even get your hands on the stuff, I could see how that could happen. But how do we explain that kind of a cost for toilet paper right now? Our next guest can probably do it. He likes to study that kind of stuff. Of course, he spends most of his time studying what's going on with the economy, what the Fed is doing, the printing of money, all the different things that are making our dollars less and less valuable. His name is Fred Dashevsky, founder of U.S. Coin Capital. Welcome to the show, Fred. I don't know what got your attention last time you went to the grocery store.
Thank you kindly. Well, great to be with you. Honestly, what caught my attention, I bought a jar, of olive oil. And it was $25. And I was just stunned. I went to the supermarket to buy just a couple of things for the house. I bought literally one bag, not completely filled, no expensive items. And she looks at me and she says, $100. And I looked at her at first. I thought she was just joking. And then I looked at the register receipt, $99 and change. It was $100. And the single item that stood out was the olive oil. So what you're alluding to here is the result of a massive, and I mean massive in the terms of trillions, of increasing numbers of U.S. paper dollars that have been printed by the Federal Reserve in response to the overwhelming growing deficits of the U.S. government and the massive debt that the country is currently holding. $33.7 trillion in bonded U.S. debt exists now. And as the government is spending money faster than it's bringing in capital, it consistently has to print more and more. The result of that additional printing beyond any growth in the economy is what we Americans experience as inflation. The end of that line is those costs of goods and services that people see at the supermarket. And I almost find it encouraging that inflation has gotten so bad that anecdotally people can't ignore it anymore, because at least now it's in the forefront of people's minds. And as this gets worse, this is becoming a big problem for Americans. The only way I found for people to protect their wealth is to counterbalance this loss in paper money with physical ownership of United States gold and silver coins, which will provide wealth protection and growth as paper money becomes worth less and less.
Let me ask you to go back to my example, though, from the grocery store about paper products, toilet paper. I never thought I'd be paying $20 for toilet paper.
Yeah, sure.
We did have a supply chain problem. COVID brought out a supply chain problem. And that kind of started the ball rolling on this, because people started buying the stuff and hoarding it. And people were just so grateful when the stores were fully stocked of it. I don't think we paid a whole lot of attention to what the price was. I wonder, though, deep down inside, how much of what we're seeing, and I understand about inflation and how that's impacting everything, but I have to wonder as well, how much of this are companies trying to make up for lost time? In other words, they see that we're still out there, we're still spending money, we're still buying things. In some cases, like toilet paper, we never want to run out of toilet paper again. Are some of these prices just getting jacked up because the producers and the wholesalers of these products understand that we're willing to pay the price in order to be able to get our hands on the stuff?
Well, I'm sure in a consumer-based economic environment that we live in, there's no question that capitalists are going to try to take advantage of market conditions, which means if they can charge more for their goods and services and get away with it, they will. I'm certain that at least some portion of that expense that you pay for the toilet paper, resides in that. But I think the bigger picture problem is the fundamental weakness in paper dollars. If you look back in time, and again, I know we have a short period here, but in 1990, there was only $3 trillion in the entire supply of money. And at that point, an ounce of silver could be purchased for $5. An ounce of gold could be purchased for $395. Move forward to 2020, just before COVID, we jumped from that $3 trillion to $20 trillion in money supply, and the cost of gold and silver have gone up fivefold. By 2023, where we are now, gold is $2,040 an ounce, and silver's $25 an ounce, fivefold increase from where it was. And this is, again, completely in response to this massive amount of paper money printed. And I think this is the fundamental flaw in the system that we're all working for, because unfortunately, people can't count on the dollar they earn today to buy the same amount of goods and services in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. And imagine how much worse this is going to be in the next few years when we jump from 33 trillion. I think within 8 years, we're going to be at 50 trillion in bonded debt. And even the interest payments then would be $2.5 trillion a year, which is substantively more than the government can afford to pay.
You know, Fred, this is all such basic economics. I don't mean to drag you into my conspiracy theories, okay? But you look at this, at the behavior of the Fed and the behavior of the federal government, and the unwillingness to tackle the issue, the unwillingness for, I would say, the majority, even including some Republicans, I bet 60% or more members of Congress spend zero, if any, time thinking about the national debt and what they need to be doing in order to correct the problem so that we don't have worthless money, so we don't become a Weimar Republic in Germany kind of a situation. But yet they don't do anything about it. And I find myself wondering, this has to be purposeful for some reason. There has to be people who are trying to tank our economy to keep doing this.
You know, you would think so. I think the problem is that the numbers have gotten so big that there aren't very many solutions left, even politically. I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, someone could have come up politically and said, okay, look, this is a problem. We don't want to have the public fighting this economic issue under the table that they have no control over. It's a losing battle for the public unless they counterbalance their wealth somehow. But I think the problem got so big that politically there's no option left. They can't come out to the public and say, you know, we need to raise your taxes by such a huge amount to cover this deficit and simultaneously cut government services. No politician wants to do that. No one wants to stand up and be that guy. So they really have a fundamental problem, and they have to sort of find their way through this maze of coming out and saying something that alludes to the idea that they might have a plan. I just believe personally we've gone past the point where there are political solutions. And I think inevitably there is an underlying concern that this control of money is done to control the public. And I've been looking at this for almost 40 years, and I'm convinced that there's definitely a relationship there between the dumbing down of America educationally, the weaker paper money, and the control of the American citizenry, where if we're all fighting the battle to survive, we don't have a lot of opportunity to step back for a moment and say, well, wait a minute, this stuff is nonsense. It's crazy. Why isn't somebody doing something? Is there some force behind the scenes? Is there a conspiracy behind this? What is the cause and root of this? I think right now people need to recognize that this is not going to change in the next few years, and it's better to be prepared ahead of time than to be caught blindsided.
No, I think you're absolutely right about the control aspect. I see that in so many things. I think that electric vehicles are about controlling our transportation. I think that there's a whole variety of different ways that the government would like us to be more dependent upon them so that they can control exactly what it is we're doing. And they seem to be well on their way to doing that. But I was kind of hoping that tanking the United States economy was not going to be a part of it. But for what you're saying, you can't wait or rely on a government answer to this, because a government answer is no doubt not coming. So the best thing we can do is to try to be as prepared as we can be to deal with it.
That's it. I used to have a lot more faith that there were congressmen that would come up with some sort of solution, but I think the problem now is simply too large. When you're 33 trillion in debt and adding $1.5 trillion a year in spending and then deficit spending and interest on top of it, it becomes almost a debt bomb, a progressive cycle that you can't get out of. So I just don't think that there's any political solution left. The only option left is what they call monetization. In other words, print your way out of the problem, which has been the way that the choice has been made for the past several years for every economic issue that has come up. Their response has been, we'll just print the money. And we'll deal with the devastation that creates for the American public down the road, because most of the politicians won't be there by the time the problem surfaces. But I'm absolutely convinced that if you can control the value of money, you can certainly control the population. And this battle, believe it or not, has been going on in America since the 1790s. When the founding fathers first looked at the monetary system for a new country, they concluded the only way to protect the public is to separate the powers, Congress and influential people, from being able to change the monetary value of money. So they set up a system of gold and silver coinage because this had intrinsic value that couldn't be inflated by politicians. It's why I'm absolutely convinced that people should have a little counterbalance of their own wealth in physical gold and silver coins now, anticipating that we're going to be printing trillions of dollars more over the next few years.
Okay. In a perfect world, and assuming that you have the ability to buy gold and silver, give us a sort of a beginner's starting point for people who have no gold or silver. They have a job. The money mysteriously, at least for now, shows up in their banking accounts. They get paid twice a month. What do you recommend people do, especially people who are pretty much at this point, living paycheck to paycheck?
Sure. Well, from the very, very wealthy all the way down to the Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck, if you can separate a little bit of capital, segregate a little bit of money, and accumulate, you can buy silver coins like old dimes and quarters and half dollars up to 1964 when they were actually made of silver. And you could buy like silver quarters. They cost maybe about $6 a coin. You could accumulate small quantities and build yourself a stash pile. For those that do have a little bit more wealth, we recommend diversifying a portion of their investment capital, into larger quantities of the same kind of product, because it's useful, it's very easy to deal with, and again, it's affordable and flexible. If you buy what they call full bags of silver coins, that would be 10,000 of those dimes or 4,000 quarters. It's 1,000 face values defined as what we call, quote unquote, a bag. Those run around $23,000, $24,000. So people can accumulate hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of silver, or they could buy a couple of bucks worth at a time as they have a little extra capital. I think it'll help to at least have something. Just keep in mind that 5 silver quarters in 1964, the last year they were made in silver, that was the minimum wage, $1.25. And that bought 4 or 5 gallons of gas and enough food to feed a family for a week. Today, those 5 silver quarters are worth about $30 or so, which still makes a reasonable hourly wage, but it shows that there's wealth protection in that physical form. So for everybody, from the lower end all the way up, I think just accumulation is the key.
Okay. Good advice. How much time do you think we have, Fred? Before what hits the fan?
This is a progressive problem. I'm not one of those who believes that there's a clock that turns and then all of a sudden everything falls apart. A lot of people within my industry are calling for the dollar to completely implode, become completely worthless, and we're going to have anarchy on the streets and conducting commerce at the supermarkets with gold and silver coins. I am not of that belief. I think we're going to see a slow, insidious inflation that is picking up in pace, but it's not going to be that you're going to wake up one Monday morning and all of a sudden all the money that you have has become worthless. I just think it will become 2 words, worth less, over a period of time. And I think that's the thing we should anticipate.
Okay. Fred, thanks for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to talk to you, sir. Sure do appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Take care. Fred Dashevsky joining us here on AM 950 KPRC and the Jimmy Barrett Show. Back with more in just a moment.